Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. This place is very interesting and it is a great story and explains sort of why Britain and England became so powerful with the British Empire, especially the East Indies Company. Now if you've followed my channel so far, you know that we've been to India together. We've shared a lot of exploration there. Many stories, many cool places, forts, the Mughal Empire, fortresses, Taj Mahal kind of stuff. But this place is super fascinating. Now, it is extremely tricky to film here. I've already been told twice to stop filming. So I'm gonna do the best I can for you, because this here is one of the wealthiest private treasuries in the world, and also easily the most controversial. This is Powis Castle, and this is the Clive Museum. Clive might ring a bell for some of you. Clive of India. His name was also given to him. I mean, have a look at this place. The treasury, the museum, is just around the corner in there, filled with stuff. I managed to get some sneaky videos so I can show you as I explain. But all of this, we can go back to the 1600s, sort of the formation of the East Indies Company. England and Britain was coming up with ways to start expanding trade. Spices, silks, textiles. The French and the Dutch were doing very well on their trading routes. And so we get these small little private companies like the East Indies Company, and there was a few others that just started off as these small, really small private companies. And it's sort of the beginning of shareholding investment. They have track records of like blacksmiths, you know, investing £20 into some of the voyages. So it's sort of the beginning and the formation of shareholding as we sort of know it today. Try and get a good view of it somewhere. This is all obviously a private estate. It is ridiculously massive. On the way in, on the drive in, you drive for minutes through it. Let me go down and find a good viewpoint, continue the story. While I do that, I'll show you some of the views this morning. Welcome back in time, friends. I just wanted to show you these roads. Look at this. Look at these roads, man. It is crazy. You would not think that this is Wales. Absolutely beautiful. We've got an hour until we're at Powis Castle, and then our interesting story will continue. But I just wanted to show you this. It's terrific, man. It's such a luxury to be in a car for once. Usually we'd be on the bike just getting sopping wet. Getting too comfortable, man. Well, here we are. We've been driving for like 4 minutes through this private estate. This whole area is part of the Powis Castle area. It's crazy. This will be my first proper castle as well. We're going into we're going into an estate like this.
Showing off here, mate.
We're going into an estate like this, mate. We need the windows down. This is all part of this estate. This is crazy. I'm excited for this one, man. Woo-hoo-hoo! So the very early 1600s, we have these private merchant companies start popping up and going on little side quests everywhere, all across the world. And this is in direct conflict, of course, with the French. So the British and the French rivalry go very far back. They had a few battles here and there. And the British East Indies Company, they land in India, in Bengal sort of area, and they set up a very good relationship with the Mughal Empire who was there. They were the wealthiest empire basically in the world. They were ridiculously rich. And they had incredible textiles like silks and all this sort of cool stuff, but they weren't that interested in sea travel and exporting the goods themselves. So the British East Indies Company, during the beginning, took control of the exports for them. They would buy all the stuff from the Mughals and then they would send it around the world. Now this is where our story gets interesting. So the British East India Company form a good relationship with the Mughals. They're doing the exports. They're actually paying tax to the Mughal Emperor, the Mughal Empire, paying taxes to them because they set up forts in Calcutta and a few different trading posts around India. And it's all going pretty well for like 100 years or 120 years or so. And then a very interesting situation happened. This is where Clive comes into our picture. Early 1700s he was born, and he enlisted and became a soldier for the East Indies Company. And they actually had a bit of a war, a bit of a fight with the French. I can't remember where it was exactly, but they had some, I think it's called like the 7-Year War. If you're from here, if you're British, you might be able to know and drop some more information in the comments. I'm trying to just remember all this stuff off the top of my head. But yeah, a false piece of information gets sent that the French were preparing a massive naval fleet to go to, I believe it was India, because the French were also in India and they were kind of fighting for control, the British and the French. So the British East Indies Company, and then also the Royal Navy, they sort of team up and make this huge, even bigger fleet. And they head over there to combat the French, who, it was actually a false document. The French were actually going to Canada, so nowhere near India. So there's Sam up there. So they basically rock up near India and they're like, well, the French aren't even here and we've sailed for months and months. So what should we do? Clive's on that ship as well, and Clive is like, well, my career is basically over. But then the Mughal Emperor at the time actually attacks Calcutta, the British fort, because the British weren't really paying the taxes they were supposed to be paying and they kept expanding their fort, you know, this kind of stuff. And Clive uses that as justification for a pretty big retaliation. Takes back Calcutta, and there's a famous battle called the Battle of Plassey. And Clive actually destroys the emperor that he, you know, was fighting against. I believe the British only had something like 3,000 troops against the Mughal emperor, who had like 50,000, which is insane. Famously, a massive monsoon came and the Indian troops, all of their gunpowder got soaked. And they thought the same thing happened to the British, so they sort of went out in the open to attack them. But the 3,000 British troops still had working gunpowder, and they were able to just like unload a crazy round of artillery, and they defeated them. So then Clive basically marches into that guy's treasury, takes a ton of stuff, becomes ridiculously wealthy himself, and they take control of Bengal, the British East Indies Company. Just a small company who have now become ridiculously powerful, taking control of like the wealthiest, you know, textile place in the world. So after the Battle of Plassey, Clive returns to Britain. He's sort of hailed as a bit of a hero. And then the British controlled areas in India go a bit chaotic over the next 10-15 years, and Clive is ordered to go back and sort of get control again. And this leads to a second battle. I think it's Buxar, B-U-X-A-R, the Battle of Buxar. So be it, Clive manages to defeat the Mughal Emperor yet again, and this is the most significant moment in terms of Britain's wealth transfer from India to Britain. Clive, there's a painting in that treasury, which I will show you right now. He is getting signed over the Diwani from, I think it's Shah Alan. I'll pronounce that name super wrong, but the Mughal emperor is signing a document, giving it to Clive, which basically grants him the right to collect tax from the richest province in India, which is insane. So from a small company, a private company, they go from being a tiny little company to then a governing superpower of the wealthiest province in the world at that time. Insane. And Clive, after the Battle of Buxar, basically loots the treasury of the Mughal emperor at the time, helps himself to hundreds of millions of dollars worth of loot, brings it back to Britain, and some of that is here, right here in this castle, in the treasury, in the Clive Museum. And this is the Powis Castle. It's a bit confusing because there's two different things going on, but I believe his family, Clive's family, later married into the Powis family, continuing making a very powerful family. So you have Clive Museum filled with Indian loot, and then you have the Powis Castle. And he became insanely rich. Hundreds of millions of pounds worth of stuff brought back. And then that led to the British, the Industrial Revolution and everything. All of that sort of money flowed back into Britain and fueled everything. Crazy, man, crazy. This one dude, Clive, who managed to just start as a soldier, work his way up. And it's a very controversial place now because people talk about, you know, they should give things back, they should do this, they should do that. But imagine telling Alexander the Great back in the day, oh mate, you should apologize for what you did. It's kind of how history goes. You get conquered. The better side defeats the not so good side. But yeah, of course, there's tons of stories in between this. There's massacres, famines, all that kind of stuff, right? As all colonizations go. But that is a brief summary for you of how fascinating this place is, how much wealth there is right here, and how this directly fueled Britain and basically built Britain and fueled the Industrial Revolution into all its glory as we all know it to be. It's a beautiful view, isn't it? Yeah, it was a bit underwhelming. Sorry guys, I was looking forward to giving you a full tour, but I had to do a full sneaky. If anyone asks, all the videos inside the treasury, it's all AI. It's a perfect place for the story. It might be boring for some of you just to listen to me rant, but
it's only boring if you're thick and you don't like history.
It's a good place though. It's got a good story. There's a lot more intricate details, like at the very start when the British East Indies Company left. They left like the harbour here. They rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and the first thing they did was just land on a Portuguese ship that was coming around the corner, and they were like, yep, we'll be having all that.
Bomber cloud, that's mine now.
Yeah. And then they came back to England without even needing to go anywhere. So they were pretty lucky. There was a lot of luck involved for sure. This is crazy, man.
26 acres, the guy said.
26 acres.
Or 23, but 27. More than 20, maximum 26. And
imagine.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Why is that red?
I don't know.
Is that because they've intentionally put something, like some type of sediment, in the cement or concrete?
You think it's not redstone?
Or is it just because the rocks they've used? Because the rocks themselves, in this part of Wales, are black, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, there's not many red places like that. We were just talking about a good point. The French, who were also in India and stuff like that, anytime that they did anything, they had to message and like communicate with, you know, the royal family and get permission to do something. So they were so slow to take action. But the East Indies Company, they didn't need any permission because they were their own company. So they just did whatever they wanted to do, and they could make decisions quickly, which also led to them bloody having hundreds of millions of pounds in here. Yeah, so this is the top area. This in here is the museum I've shown you already. But very interesting stuff, very interesting stuff. Just like if a few things didn't line up well, it probably wouldn't have happened this way. The Mughal Empire at the time, the Mughal Empire was declining. So they had a lot of infighting in India already, and they sort of lost control. So all of these different states, like what's it called again? We went to a few of them, Jaipur, or a few of all these different little regions in India just became separate kingdoms, separate empires kind of, and there was no direct control over the entire country of India, because it is very big, so it's very hard to control, of course. So then it just so happened that the British ended up being there on the perfect time, and they could sprinkle in a little bit of control and like bribe people to help them fight against another empire or another kingdom in India. And it just so worked that they got it done well. A few lucky stages at a couple of battles. The gunpowder, for instance, protecting the gunpowder, making sure it wasn't wet. The Indian army gunpowder getting soaked, and then, yeah, victory. 3,000 men versus 50,000. That's crazy. The main thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot, the picture showing Shah Alam signing over the Diwani to Clive, which is the rights to collect tax. So basically the company, British East Indies Company, becoming a governing power, which is crazy. That was like a fabricated picture of what really happened. Supposedly it took place in like Clive's tent, and it was like as quick as, you know, buying a jacket. They just signed it over, done. Supposedly a gunpoint or knife point, you know, forced him to sign it over. pretty insane. So it's interesting how they fabricate different things, you know, like then Clive would get someone to paint that painting, showing that it's like a ceremonial handover, and Shah Alam was willing to give him the Diwani, that kind of stuff. Because then when they came back to England, Clive was put through court a couple of times, but because he was so wealthy, he just bribed a lot of people to shut up and not say anything. Because he was questioned a few times, because he obviously just went in the treasury in Delhi, the Mughal emperor's treasury, and just took stuff for himself. And then when they came back to England, they were like, how did you get all this stuff? And Clive was like, well, you know, they just gave it to us. They sort of welcomed us as the new governing power and just gave us all these gifts. But not really the case. This estate is crazy. We're still driving out of it, and it's absolutely massive. Well, fast forward about 40 minutes drive, and look at this, Llyn Fernwy Lake. That was my attempt at a Welsh pronunciation. Look at this. And a beautiful resort. 100 quid a night with an amazing breakfast. Not bad. So, I wanted to give you a, you know, concise-ish wrap-up and history explaining Powis Castle and Clive of India. It was a little bit quick because I was more planning to actually do a walkthrough, sort of walk and talk as we walked around the castle and through the museum, but yeah, we were stopped and we weren't allowed a video. But that's okay. Pretty interesting. That is basically the history of how England and Britain led up to what we know it today. The colonization, the beginning of all of that kind of stuff. And now we're up in the mountains a bit more, and these lakes have some pretty interesting stories, but I will save that for next video, because that is a whole journey in itself. The English flooded a few of these towns. There used to be towns here. And yeah, some very controversial history and, you know, pretty heartfelt history in the Welsh communities. So that's what next video is going to be about. We'll explore a few of these. There's tons of these reservoirs and dams, and they feed water to some of the big cities like Liverpool and stuff like that in England. But we'll save that for next video. So, thanks for watching. Make sure to press the like button, and thank you to eSIMatic, the eSIM company, for keeping me connected on the go. If you want an eSIM when you travel, code HECTIC, all in capitals, for 5% off. That's eSIMatic company. See you in the next video as we explore what the hell happened with some of these lakes. Peace out.